Hey there, writers and muse daters. I'm really excited to be here today with Soni Singh, one of the members over in the writing gym. Now, look, lots of times writers talk about just being in a place where they're stuck. They've got most of their plot put together, but they can see there are holes and they're not sure how to solve that problem. And Soni's here to talk to us today about some of the work that she's been doing with that exact problem. So welcome, Soni.
Thank you for having me.
We've celebrated you a whole bunch. You've had some amazing victories over the last couple of months. But for people who haven't met you yet, let's back it up to the beginning and where you were on the day that you and I met in terms of what was going on with your novel. Where was it at that point?
So when we started working together, which was March this year, I had a draft of my novel that didn't necessarily have a complete ending. I mean, it had an actual ending, but it wasn't where I wanted it to be. I knew that it needed work. I knew that it needed more clarity for me to figure out how to finish it, but I wasn't really sure how to get there.
As I recall, and let me know how this resonates with you, but it sort of felt like we had sort of some big boulders, but there wasn't really the bridges, to mix metaphors, in between those boulders to connect the major plot points.
Absolutely. There were big events, like there were markers in my protagonist's journey, but there wasn't necessarily a tie-in or a way for the events to flow one from the other. It was sort of this happened, then that happened, then that happened. And so it felt disjointed.
How did that feel as the creator, as the writer, to look at your piece and say, what was that like?
Well, it's confusing because I knew I had something there, and I knew that it was a story worth telling. And there were times that, I had thought about sort of dropping it and getting on another project. And this was before working with you. But I just kept on coming back to it, but I just had no idea how to do it or how to go about it. And I had shown it to other people who were providing me more feedback about copy editing, maybe more so than the actual editorial content of it.
Let's take a moment to talk about that, because in our chat earlier today, we were talking about beta readers. And beta readers is one of my pet topics. People may have heard me talk about it before, but you have some experience with beta readers. You shared your manuscript that was, you were looking for a solution. You tried some beta readers. What did that look like in terms of the type of feedback that you got from them?
It was all over the place. I had a few people read through the manuscript, and some were informative in the sense that they would say, oh, I feel, you could add more about the cultural aspect, or you could add more kind of this kind of content, but I wasn't really able to figure out how, and nor did they have the tools to figure out how to tell me to fix it. They just knew there was a problem. And the other issue was that, for instance, one person would say that they thought that the best component in my writing was the dialogue, and another person said it was the absolute worst component. And so then you'd look at it and say, well, what do I do now? That doesn't help me at all. It wasn't that it wasn't helpful. It definitely was helpful, but it just was not consistent.
Right. So it sounds like there was an inconsistency, just the lack of how to, like, I like your dialogue, I don't like your dialogue. How do I fix that? I don't know.
Exactly. And also not pointing out, specific areas, like this is where it needs to be fixed. It was just sort of a general comment, which, when you have 90,000 words, it's kind of hard to go back and reevaluate.
Kudos to you for not getting lost down that rabbit hole, because what happens for a lot of writers is they get back this beta reader feedback and they think, oh gosh, I've got to overhaul all of my dialogue and then all of my character arcs, and then that character needs to go because Jane didn't like it. You didn't go there. Instead, you reached out to me. So for people who missed your last celebration, let's fill them in on the interim between when we met and sort of where you are today.
We first started working together, and you read through my manuscript, and now you've done that twice. So we've come up with second draft. The first thing I think was just trying to take a bigger picture of what is currently on the page versus what is missing. I had to look at the plot arc. I had to look at the character arcs, how to build conflict, and is there enough conflict, and look at every single chapter and see how does this chapter actually move the story forward. Where is it putting the protagonist? What is going on with her? What are her conflicts? How is she herself her own conflict, or how are people creating conflict? And so the first revision was focused on those details, try to kind of make a more cohesive story so that there was a clear beginning and a clear end, and that sort of rising action, climax, and the whole thing. Now, we're I think taking a deeper delve into the book to look at some of the underlying threads and really questioning what is this story about and what is the character's journey.
Even up until this point, when you and I had this amazing conversation, your journey has really been phenomenal in terms of the progress that you've made on this particular manuscript, but also in learning about who you are as a writer.
I mean, it's completely and entirely changed my writing style, my ability to evaluate my own writing, my ability to read what I've put out, knowing what I need in order to take a step back to look at my writing in a different way. That has completely changed, and that's been through the exercises that you've created for us and a lot of the questions that you pose as you read through the material, because most of the time you pose questions that I've never even thought about.
Let's move into one of the things that we really want to highlight as a celebration for you today, because this is a really good segue. And that is around the blind spots that authors have. If I recall, this morning you were talking about, like, I know that something's missing, but I don't know what it is. So what is this process that you and I have been in for the last couple of weeks that has helped you to get clarity on those blind spots?
The process has been you asking questions and me being receptive to answer them. The important process in terms of me figuring out the answers is almost removing myself from the equation and talking directly to my character. Sometimes that involved me just asking her questions directly and writing them out. More recently, what led to the breakthrough that I had was putting her in scene with another character, but having that scene not take place during the timeline of the book, so that the timeline of the book wasn't affected. It was more conversation between two characters where they were reflecting on what happened throughout the course of the book.
Remember when you and I were having that conversation earlier this week, and I said to you, what would happen if you took these two characters and you put them in this kind of a situation, and the one character turned to the other character and asked this question? What did it feel like for you in the moment that I presented that scenario to you?
First, it was shocking, but shocking in the sense that you pose a question I hadn't even thought of, or I hadn't even realized. And you had commented that you felt that the protagonist didn't like a lot of the people or the men that she dated, and I hadn't even noticed that. It wasn't in my consciousness or awareness. And so when you asked that, my first reaction was, oh, right, she doesn't. To then pose that question as part of the scene in a way was the key for me to get the answer, because my first reaction was to think of the answer myself, to say, well, why is it that she doesn't like these people, rather than allow her to answer. And so the key to getting the breakthrough was allowing her to answer. But for that, I needed to put her in scene with her friend.
So we talked about some other solutions. So there was a moment in time when you were sort of chugging along by yourself and saying, I could do this. And then you shared your writing with some beta readers and they gave you some feedback. And now you're in the writing gym. The analogy that we talked about this morning was, you're a glacier who has been moving down the mountain, and now it's broken loose and we're gliding down the mountain. What was the difference in choosing to invest in yourself, choosing to be here in the writing gym versus these other solutions that caused that momentum for you?
I think there were several factors. One, simply you're a professional, have the insight that other people do not have. The beta readers that I went to are avid readers, but they're not in the industry. The level of feedback is completely and entirely different. You're constantly evaluating stories. They are doing it for entertainment and say, yes, I like it, no, I don't like it, but not be able to break down why or what's missing, or how to get to what's missing. And I think that the beauty of what you do is that you have that insight, but you also don't give the answer. You don't say, Sony, this is what you need to do to fix the story. You pose questions that force me to come to that answer. And I think it's become a very organic process that now I'm so used to, where you ask me questions and then I realize, oh, this is going to lead to a breakthrough. And I have no idea what the breakthrough is going to be or where my thought process is going to go. I just know that's going to help me get there.
Awesome. And some people might hear that and think, oh my gosh, that's terrifying. I would hate to sit down and not know where it's going. What gives you the confidence to face the blank page and know that on the other side, there will be answers?
Trusting the process, trusting that I have the answers, trusting that even when I feel that I don't have the answers, if I either work on it from different perspectives, sometimes, for instance, starting as what I said with me specifically answering the question and then allowing my character, or, stepping away from it, or whatever it is, that it eventually will come.
Amazing. And you're in the writing gym. It's a community. There are many other writers doing the same thing that you're doing, writing, revising a book toward traditional publication. How does the support from your peers help in having some of that confidence?
And it's instrumental in several ways. One, because we have this virtual community that sometimes you think that it's not the same as if you were in person. We are all engaged in the same process. We all have a common goal. We're all rooting for each other because the success of one person gives you more confidence and motivation that you too will get there. And so a lot of it is just sharing on Facebook. We come together through sessions that you organize on essentially a weekly basis, where we touch base with one another. And during those times, we share some of our challenges, some of our experiences, some of our writing. That also is, I think, instrumental in getting that confidence to know that, eventually I'll get there.
Thank you for sharing that. Let's go back to way back this morning, 2 hours ago, when you and I were having our actual session. Tell me a little bit about our decision to say, this is a moment that we need to celebrate. What felt like the real celebration there?
The real celebration was coming to the real why behind the story. One of the first pieces of advice I think that you gave when we started working together is always focus on the why. I've kept that in mind, but it's hard to get there because I'm so immersed in what I'm doing. It takes a bit of stepping back and awareness to be like, oh, I haven't asked myself why, my character is doing all this. And I've sort of felt that I've skirted the why, the true, real, deep, what is this journey about? And the breakthrough that happened was I finally figured it out.
So it sounds like there's a little bit of accountability there, right? Like when you're working on your own, you can be like, I'm gonna just write this scene about what she's wearing, right? You don't have to, like, if there's nobody facing you saying, so, what did you come up with for your character?
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, if I didn't have you, I probably would have just let it slide and be like, it's good enough.
It could work in some circumstances, but because you have the very specific goal of traditional publication, you're looking at some really high standards that you want to know what they are.
I will be completely honest, standards that I didn't think I was capable of achieving. It's one of those things that I knew there was something that needed to be fixed. I didn't know what, and I didn't know if I could get there.
How does it feel now to know what the standards are and to know that you can get there?
I feel like my dream is possible. It like has completely and entirely changed my perspective of, I have this goal that I want to reach of being able to traditionally publish my book. Like I finally feel like I have the key to the castle.
I breathed a sigh of relief on your behalf. How does that feel for you?
A little surreal because I feel it was such a big moment to come to, like to just sit down and just sit with it, just kind of have that moment of, wow, I've gone to a pretty deep place. In a good way, And so at this point, what I feel is just excitement to be able to translate that on the page. That's kind of where I'm focusing right now, just that level of excitement.
That is so powerful. And I even feel like I just want to take a moment to honor that place, that achievement, right? Of knowing that you can do it, of, I don't know, reaching a plateau. I almost feel like if you were trying to be a rock musician, like you've just opened for like an A-list band. You are like on your way and you can see the path in front of you, and maybe you're a little starstruck.
Starstruck is the right word. Like I'm just, yeah.
That is amazing. The ineffable qualities of the writing gym. You had said something about, that there's a questioning method over in the writing gym versus me telling you what to do. Some people may have worked with professional editors. 99% of professional editors work like this. You send them your pages X number of weeks or months back. After that, they send you a whole bunch of red pen pages that say, change this scene, add more dialogue, where is he going, in the side margins. And it's up to you to go through all those comments and just fix it. No conversation. From your experience, how is your writing gym experience, where you and I are meeting twice a week, we're talking through your actual characters, your actual plot, different from that kind of change this scene, he should be wearing red pants type of feedback?
It's completely different. And I did have an editor who I started with who worked like that. It was instructive and it helped me complete a draft. But for instance, answering these kinds of questions, I don't think I would ever have gotten there or would have been able to look at the plot or evaluate the plot in the same way. It helps to have a sounding board. A lot of times when we meet, just even talking about what is happening in the story, does it make sense? Does it not make sense? Does that open up? Does that lead to more questions? But also me as a writer, I'm struggling with this, and having somebody and having you essentially be able to say, well, try this or try that, or how about you step back here, or how about try this technique? You offer a lot of tools that in your traditional editor role, at least I wasn't getting. And it makes all the difference to meet with somebody once to talk generally about all of the edits, and then you're stuck with whatever interpretation or whatever you remember versus this dialogue, because I don't think I would have gotten this particular breakthrough if you and I hadn't been talking about it for the last couple of weeks, because this is something that we've circled back on, and it was almost like peeling the layers to get to the core, but you wouldn't get that with a traditional editor.
So many things to celebrate for your progress today, getting to that core, finding your writing process, feeling confident, this sort of unspeakable starstruckness of being able to see that you're going to get there, that you're going to finish a novel to publishable that's just a bang up, entertaining story that's well written. So much happening for you, Sony. I honor this celebration and what's going on for you. This is amazing.
Well, I honor you, because if it hadn't been for you, I wouldn't have been here.
Thank you for that. And for people who are listening right now or watching right now and they have no idea who we are or what we're talking about, if they're thinking, I want some of that for me, how do I get into this writing gym thing? What would you say to them about making that decision?
Say if writing is something that you seriously want to do, and the traditional publishing process is the road that you want to take, then don't hesitate. I mean, I think one of the things that stood out for me when you and I first spoke is that you were so different from anybody else I'd spoken to. And I think I made a decision right away. I mean, we were on a call just to kind of dialogue to see if this was going to work out. And it was just like, to me, it was a no-brainer. I thought, yep, this is important to me. This is something worth investing, and I'm going to do it. It's paid off quite wonderfully.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us, for celebrating with us, for letting us celebrate you in community and the vulnerability that it takes to share your story. We really appreciate the inspiration that you've provided for other writers. And we are so grateful to have you in the writing gym, Sony. You're really rocking it.
Thank you. Well, it's wonderful to be a part of the writing gym and especially to work with you. So thank you for everything that you do.
Wonderful. Big hugs. And to those of you watching, until next time, happy writing.